set up the game of GUBS, first set up the game area. To do this, remove one GUB card from the deck for each player in the game. The GUBS removed should be plain GUBS and not the Esteemed Elder. Also remove the 3 letter cards from the deck and set them aside. After removing the appropriate cards, shuffle the deck. Then, split the deck into 3 piles. Place one of the letter cards on top of each pile. Next, combine the 3 piles into one deck and then shuffle the deck thoroughly. After the deck has been set up, place it in the middle of the player area, where all players can access it. When the game area is finished being set up, players are ready to set up their player areas. To set up the player areas, each player will be given one of the GUB cards removed from the deck at the beginning of the game. They will place their GUB face up in their player area. Each player will also be dealt 3 cards from the deck. These cards will become that player's hand, so they are allowed to look at them, but should keep them secret from other players. If a player is dealt an event card which will have a lightning bolt on it, they will remove it from their hand and place it back into a random location in the deck. They will then draw another card to replace that card. After setting up the game area and each player's area, the game is ready to begin. The player who suggested playing the game decides who the start player will be, and that player will start the game. Each player's turn will consist of 3 steps. The first step is to draw. During the draw step, a player will choose whether or not to draw a card. If a player chooses not to draw a card, they will skip this step. However, if they do skip, they must draw a card during the next turn. Players are never allowed to skip drawing 2 times in a row. If a player does decide to draw, they will take the top card of the deck and look at it. Each card will be a certain type of card. The type of card will be displayed on the bottom of the card, so this card is a GUB. Most types of cards that a player will draw will go into that player's hand. The only type of card that will not go into their hand is an event card. Event cards always have a lightning bolt on the bottom of them. These cards will take effect immediately, and in most cases will be simply discarded after they are used. There are several different types of event cards. Let's take a look at these cards now. The 3 letter cards are the only event cards that are not discarded after being drawn. When a letter card is drawn, it will be placed out in the middle of the playing area, where all players can see it, and will remain there until the end of the game. Dangerous Alchemy affects only the player who drew it. That player must remove all of their cards from their player area, except the Esteemed Elder if they have it. The Esteemed Elder is immune to this card. All cards removed will be placed in the discard pile. The Flash Flood affects all players in the game. This requires all free GUBS that do not have a barricade over them to be removed from all players' areas. All removed GUBS will be placed on the top of the deck, not the discard pile, and the deck will be shuffled. Once again, the Esteemed Elder is immune to the Flash Flood, so will not have to be removed from any player's area. The Gargok Plague affects all players in the game. This card requires all players to place all of their hand cards back to the top of the deck, and then the deck will be shuffled. The Age-Old Cure is a special card that can protect players from the Gargok Plague. When the plague is drawn, if a player has an Age-Old Cure, they may discard it from their hand and protect their hand from being discarded. All other players will still have to discard. The Rumor of Wasps affects all players in the game. Any player that has a Toad Rider in their player area must remove the Toad Rider and the GUB underneath the Toad Rider from their player area. Any removed cards will be placed on top of the deck, and then the deck will be shuffled. The Traveling Merchant also affects all players. This card requires all players to choose one card from their hand to keep, and then to pass the rest of their hand cards to the right. So all players will receive a new hand of cards. Event cards can have some very negative effects on the game. There is one card that can stop an event card from happening. If a player has a flop boat in their hand, they may place it in the discard pile when an event card is drawn. This will force the event card to be placed back on the top of the deck, and then the deck will be shuffled. There is also a special wild card in the game, known as the Cricket Song. This card can be played as a flop boat and have the same effect. After a player has drawn their one card, or skipped their draw step, they will move into the next step of their turn. The next step of a player's turn after they draw is to play cards from their hand. A player may play as many cards as they choose during their turn. They may also choose not to play any cards and skip this step. There are several types of cards a player may play during their turn. GUB cards are the first type of card. These come in two types, free GUBS and the Esteemed Elder. A player may play either type of GUB card by removing it from their hand and placing it face up in their player area. Free GUBS are very vulnerable to other players' attacks, so they should be played wisely. The Esteemed Elder, on the other hand, is immune to everything except lightning. Barricades are another type of card. There are three types of barricades: Velvet Moth, Toad Rider, and Mushroom cards. The main use for a barricade is to protect a free GUB by placing it over that GUB. Only one barricade is allowed per GUB, and barricades can never be played alone without GUBS underneath them. The Esteemed Elder will never have a barricade placed over it. Alternately, Mushrooms and Toad Riders have a second ability. A mushroom card may be discarded by a player, and the player who discarded the mushroom can choose one other player and force that player to discard one of their mushrooms to the discard pile. The Toad Rider may be discarded, and the player who discarded it can choose one player in the game and force them to discard one of their barricades. Hazards are a third type of card that may be discarded by a player to allow them to attack another player. The Cyclone is a type of hazard that allows a player to choose one player and destroy all of their barricades in play. The GUBS underneath the barricades will remain in that player's area. The barricades they destroy will be placed into the discard pile. The Lightning card has two possible uses, and the player using it may choose either of these uses. First, they may discard the Lightning card, and they may force any player who played the Esteemed Elder to discard it. Lightning is the only card that forces a player to discard the Elder. The second option they have with the Lightning card is to discard it, and then they may choose any one player in the game and force them to discard their hand. The Lure card allows a player to discard the card, and then they may take any one free GUB from another player's area and place it in their area. The Esteemed Elder is immune to the Lure card. The Super Lure card allows a player to discard the card, and they may take any free or protected GUBS away from one player. If they take any protected GUBS, the player who was stolen from will return the barricades to their hand, and the player who played the Super Lure will place the stolen GUBS in their player area. Once again, the Esteemed Elder is immune to the Super Lure. There is one card that may be used to stop a Lure or a Super Lure card. This is the Blindfold card. When a player has a Lure or a Super Lure played on them, if they have the Blindfold card in their hand, they may discard it and protect their GUBS from being stolen. The Omen Beetle lets a player discard this card, and then all players in the game, including the player who played it, must discard any mushroom cards they have and the GUBS hiding beneath them. The Small Thief allows a player to discard it, and then they may take any one card in any player's player area. If they take a GUB that is protected, the barricade will go back into the owner's hand. The stolen card will go into the player who played the Small Thief's area. The player who played the Small Thief is not allowed to take the Esteemed Elder card, ring cards, or GUBS hiding under rings from a player's area. A Spear is another type of card that can be used as either a tool or a hazard. Its use as a tool to destroy a sudspout will be described later. The hazard use of a Spear is that it allows a player to kill any other player's free GUB by removing it from their player area and placing it in the discard pile. The Cricket Song card is a wild card that can be used as any of the previously described hazard cards, so it can be used as a Cyclone, Lightning, Lure, Super Lure, Omen Beetle, Small Thief, or a Spear. A Feather card is a special interrupt card that can be used as a defense card against a hazard. A player that is attacked by a hazard card may discard a Feather card from their hand to cancel the effect of the hazard. Traps are a fourth type of card that are placed over free GUBS and prevent those GUBS from scoring points. There are two types of traps, rings and sudspouts. Rings are used to trap an exact amount of GUBS, either one GUB with a single ring, two GUBS with a double ring, or three GUBS with a triple ring. A player may not play a ring unless they can trap the exact amount of GUBS needed for that ring. When a player plays a ring, they may gain free GUBS from any of the other players' areas. They will place the free GUBS they gained into their area, and then they will place the ring card over those GUBS. The Hacky Flute is a card that can shatter any ring in the game. To play this card, any player may discard it from their hand, and then also discard the ring card. Then the player who played the hacky flute will gain the GUBS under the ring and place them in their area. Sudspouts are the other type of trap that is used to trap one free GUB in any player's area. The GUB card will remain where it is, but it will be trapped, so the player must pop the Sudspout before they can score points for that GUB. The way to pop a Sudspout is by using a spear card. To pop a Sudspout, any player in the game may discard a spear card from their hand, and then discard the Sudspout card. Now the GUB is a free GUB again. The feather card, which was used to cancel a hazard, may also be used to cancel a trap card. So if a player plays a trap, such as a Sudspout, another player may discard a feather from their hand and then discard the Sudspout. Tools are another type of card that may be played. There are 4 types of tools. The hacky flute and the spear were both previously described. The scout card may be used as one of 2 uses. First, a player may discard it, and then they may choose one player in the game and look at that player's hand cards. Alternately, they may discard the scout card and look at the top 3 cards of the draw deck. Then, they may rearrange the cards in any order that they wish and place them back on top of the pile. A player may also use the Wild Cricket Song card as any of the 4 tools explained. The final type of cards are interrupt cards. Most of these cards were explained previously, with the blindfold card canceling any lure or super lure card, the flop boat causing an event card to be shuffled back into the deck, the feather, which can cancel any hazard or trap card, and the age-old cure, which generally protects a player's hand from the Gargok Plague. The other use of the age-old cure is that it can be discarded, and then the player may look through the discard pile to find a free GUB. They will place the GUB from the discard pile into their hand. A Cricket Song card may also be played as any of the 4 interrupt cards. After the active player has played all of the cards from their hand that they would like, they will move on to the final step of their turn. The final step of a player's turn is to discard. This is only done if a player ends their turn with more than 8 cards in their hand. When a player discards, they will choose a card or cards from their hand and place them into the discard pile until they get back down to 8 cards in their hand again. After a player has discarded if they need to, their turn is over, and they will tell the next player it is their turn by saying go. The game ends immediately when the 3rd letter card is drawn from the deck. When the game ends, all players count up the number of GUBS they have in their area. They will gain 1 point for each free GUB they have, 1 point for each protected GUB they have, and 1 point if they have the Esteemed Elder. Players do not gain any points for any GUBS that are trapped under rings or in Sudspouts. After players count up their points, the player with the most points is the winner. If the players are tied at the end of the game for the most points, the tiebreaker is the tied player who holds the Esteemed Elder card. If none of the tied players hold the Esteemed Elder card, the tied player who ends the game with the fewest hand cards is the winner.